One of the chapters in your book that really caught my attention, from my personal interest, is what if we became better storytellers? And what I believe is that this is where the real change will take place, is in changing the narrative, changing, the story about we tell ourselves about what it means to be human at this time of climate breakdown. And can you explain this idea within the context of the book for us?
The Swedish government recently hired a guy called Per Gronqvist to be he works for the Swedish government. His job title is Chief Storyteller. And his job description is to bring to life the day-to-day realities of living in a low-carbon future. I feel like every council should have someone do that. Every organization should have someone doing that. We should all have the capacity to do that. And the reason that storytelling, I feel, is so important is because we are not going to stimulate and bring about a revolution of the imagination and the scale of change that we need to see in the next 10 or 15 years just by giving people facts and figures and information. If that was going to have worked, we'd have done it and started in the 80s, and we've done it by now, and it would have been so much easier than doing it now. For me, the big work of now is to cultivate longing, is the cultivation of longing. I always say it's like the moon. Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon in 1969. It wasn't his idea to go to the moon. It wasn't JFK's idea in 1960 when he announced the Apollo program. We've been going to the moon for centuries, since Galileo said, actually, do you know what? It's a thing. You could actually go there. It's not like a sort of a disc painted on the ceiling or something. It's an actual round thing, and you could go there. We went there in stories and songs, and stories where we went up there on a big silver ladder, or we flew there on a bird. Jules Verne wrote his book about going to the moon, where they fired the astronauts there in a cannon. I don't think they quite thought through how they were supposed to get home again afterwards. I always had this vision of us just endlessly firing people off out of a cannon, assuming they all having a really great time on the moon. And actually, that really wasn't what happened to them. Tin went to the moon. Frank Sinatra sang us to the moon. By the time we got to 1960, the cultural collective longing to get to the moon was so intense that we did it in 9 years from scratch, and the average age of people who did it was 26. If we can cultivate the longing for this stuff, it becomes so much easier. And cultivating longing is the work of imagination, and it's the work of storytelling. And the poet Rilke once said something like, "The future must enter into you a long time before it happens." And the problem we have is that we're so brilliant at telling endless stories about our own demise, whether we are destroyed by aliens or zombies or gremlins or diseases or I don't know, whatever, I don't know, all the stuff that destroys us in films. We never tell the films about us seeing a great problem like that and actually coming together and sorting it out and doing it, and we need those stories. And so I often do activities with groups, just all sorts of playing imaginative stories sort of stuff. One of the things that I do at the beginning of every talk actually is this sort of time machine exercise where I tell everybody I bought my time machine. I spent lockdown building a time machine, and that we're going to travel to 2030 in this thing, and then there's an imagination. We all travel to 2030, and I say it's not utopia, but it's the result of us doing everything we could. And I invite them to take a walk around in that world, and then tell their partner. They get into pairs and to share it with people. It's often quite a kind of a moving, really moving experience for people actually, because often people who are activists spend all of their work trying to build a world that they never really pause to stop and try and imagine. In the podcast that I do, From What If to What Next, every episode has 2 guests and we explore a different what if question. And we start every episode like that. So if we're exploring a universal basic income, we don't say, would this be a good idea? I say, okay, imagine we've had a universal basic income since 2022. Walk us through that world. How is it different? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? And actually, one of the things I've been doing now that we've done 30-something episodes is to cut a lot of my favorite bits of those together. And we've done some bits then when we've worked with an animator to bring them to life, and we've worked with sort of people doing sound art and music using those bits, because it's so evocative as stories, people bringing that future to life in different ways, because yeah, as I say, this is about longing and how we cultivate longing.